Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're looking at this. It's the Harley Benton MR-Classic, looking resplendent today in this beautiful shade of metallic blue. Now this guitar is part of Harley Benton's vintage series of electric guitars, so it's very affordable, coming in at €249. And from the looks and aesthetic of this thing and the letters MR in its name, we can quite clearly see that this guitar is Harley Benton's tip of the hat to the legendary cult Mosrite brand of electric guitars. For those of you less familiar with Mosrite, they first came out of America in the late 1950s. They predominantly built guitars that looked a bit like this and were used by bands like the Ventures mostly to play surf music. But in more recent decades, you'll know the Mosrite brand for guitar players like Johnny Ramone, who did a lot of punk rock on guitars like this, and even alternative rock and grunge players like Kurt Cobain. So very much an alternative style. It's kind of what I think Salvador Dali might have made a guitar look like had he invented one. But I actually think that these guitars are sort of boxed into a corner in a little bit. They're seen as very quirky, they're seen as not being sort of traditional instruments. You wouldn't see AC/DC playing classic rock on a guitar like this, that's for sure. And one thing I wanted to do was get this guitar in to really see how versatile it could actually be. So what we're going to do today is play it in as many different genres as we can, as I typically do with instruments on my channel. We'll play it in country and folk and punk, we'll do some rock and some metal, we'll even tune it down to drop D to see if it can do that as well. Okay then, so let me first tell you about the specifications of this instrument. Underneath the beautiful metallic blue paint job then we have a basswood body, and the body is actually kind of in two layers, so it's sort of raised across the top, across the playing portion there. It looks really cool and it adds to the overall look. That's a Mosrite detail for sure. I love the shape of the scratch plate too. That really adds to the aesthetic, as do the two bulbous horns on the guitar. And I really like the fact that the lower horn is actually much bigger and chunkier than the upper one. That really makes this look like a left-handed guitar upside down. It makes it look very alternative, that's for sure. Now on the guitar front itself, we have a no-name wraparound bridge. All 6 strings are individually intonatable, so that's pretty cool. We have 2 Artec branded pickups with a 3-way selector switch and a master volume and tone control. You plug your guitar in to the top of this guitar, so that's always something to look out for. Now on the back of the body, you can see it's just a slab of basswood there. We have a bolt-on neck. The neck itself is actually maple, and we have a roasted jatoba fingerboard. There's 22 frets on this guitar. Harley Benton aren't telling us what size they are, but for me, they feel like they might be medium because this is kind of a vintage feeling guitar. Now the scale length of this guitar is 648 millimeters. That's 25.5 inches, and the fingerboard radius on this guitar is 12 inches, so fairly flat. We've got a 42 millimeter nut, and the neck profile to me feels like a slimmish to medium C shape, so it's really nice and easy to get up and down. The satin finish is really good. Moving up to the headstock, that is metallic blue and sparkly, just like the rest of the guitar. And on the back, we have 6 Wilkinson tuners. So now what we're going to do is play the MR-Classic, and as I said, I want to play this guitar in as many different styles as I can. Let's see if we can make it do classic rock. Let's see if we can make a guitar like this with P90s like this do metal. Let's see how versatile it really is. So my rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 head, and we'll start on the amps clean channel and do a lot of clean vintagey sort of stuff, some pop and some folk and maybe a bit of indie as well. Then we'll kick in my Greer Lightspeed organic overdrive pedal for a bit of light crunch, for some indie and for some classic rock. After that we'll go up to the amps lead channel and do some heavier stuff, some hard rock, some punk rock, maybe some Ramones or something like that, and some alternative stuff. And at the very end we'll go back to the amps clean channel. I'll switch on my Rev G3 distortion, we'll tune the MR-Classic down to drop D and see if it can do a little bit of chug. Enough talk then. This is the Harley Benton MR-Classic. Let's play it now and we'll speak in more detail about it afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Harley Benton MR-Classic, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones. And I hope that I've dispelled one myth already, and that's that you don't just have to play Surf or Ramones stuff on a guitar like this. Of course you can do that, and I did do a little bit of that, as much as I could anyway, and I thought it sounded really, really good. But I actually had a whole load of fun playing this guitar for pretty much any style of music as well, and I think it is actually more versatile than it really has any sort of a right to be at the end of the day. So let me go on and tell you about my thoughts in a bit more detail. When I first got the guitar out of the box, I was blown away by the way it looks. I mean, look at this metallic blue gloss finish. It's sparkly as well, and you've got it on the headstock too. It looks amazing. And it kind of looked a bit huge as well, because, you know, they're almost cumbersomely large bodies on these Mosrite style guitars. And actually, I have seen online that the Harley Benton bodies are even smaller than the original Mosrites, but they are big, they are chunky, and they are big slabs of basswood as well, and fairly heavy too. Now, when I picked this guitar up, I noticed that it was not a light one. It's not super heavy. It weighs 3.8 kilograms, which is actually 8 pounds 6 ounces. So not backbreakingly heavy or anything like that, but a guitar like this, and if you're familiar with Dan Electro guitars, as I am, which are not dissimilar to this style of guitar, I had expected it to be just a little bit lighter, but I'm not complaining about the weight anyway. And the other thing that I noticed when I first picked up the guitar was that it seems to have been set up very well at the factory. The neck felt really nice, there's no rough fret ends or anything like that. The action is nice and medium to low, the intonation is spot on, all good, as I actually have come to expect from the majority of Harley Benton guitars that I've played up to date now. So with first impressions out of the way, the next thing I wanted to do was check out the build quality of this guitar. Now let me remind you again that this instrument costs €249 new, so you cannot expect custom shop Fender or Gibson levels of quality from a guitar like this. That said, for €249, it's really hard to find anything whatsoever to fault with this instrument. So in terms of the finish, the metallic blue, it's been applied beautifully across the whole guitar. I can't find any blemishes on the body or on the headstock either, so really, really good marks there for Harley Benton. The neck as well, as I said, it's all been set up and done really well at the factory. There is one thing that I can find on the back of the neck. I can't see it, but I can feel it. There's a slight nick in the back of the neck behind the 3rd fret. Doesn't affect me whatsoever when I'm playing, but if I rub my thumb across the back of the neck, I can feel it. But apart from that though, no issues with build quality whatsoever, no problems with the jack input, no crackly pots, no problems with the pickup selector switch, all good in terms of the build quality department. Now, one thing I am really interested to try is the modern version of the Harley Benton MR guitar, which costs €100 more and comes with certain quality upgrades. So that guitar has stainless steel frets, it has an ebony fretboard, it has locking tuners and a Graphtec nut as opposed to a generic nut. It also has humbuckers with a coil split, and it has a Wilkinson vibrato as well. So that's going to be something I'm really interested to check out at some point. That guitar costs €349, but again, for €249, I really can't complain at all about the quality that I've found on this example of the MR Classic. When it came to the playability too, I've just had massive amounts of fun with this guitar. It's just really easy and comfortable to play. And I had imagined with this big, cumbersome looking body that it wouldn't be that easy or that comfy, but it really is. Standing up with the strap or sitting down with the guitar on my knee, it's really comfortable and easy to play. The slim satin neck feels really good, no problems whatsoever in terms of the neck. The one issue that I have had with the playability is the fact that I don't have a right angled jack lead, and so I've been plugging my jack lead in here, and when I'm trying to turn the tone control, it does get a little bit in the way. That's a minor problem, and I would, if I was playing this guitar for a gig or something like that, I would get a right angled jack lead. But apart from that, playability of this guitar, absolutely fantastic, and I wouldn't change anything about it. And now we come to that other crucial aspect of the guitar, which is, does it actually sound any good? Well, you've heard the sound samples already, so leave me your thoughts about how good you thought it sounded down there in the comments. Tell me if you thought it is actually more versatile than you might traditionally give a Mosrite credit for. But for me personally, I thought that these Artec pickups really gave me bags of versatility, and I had loads of fun playing this guitar. The riffs just sort of flew out of it. I was really creative when playing this guitar, and I think I'm going to hang on to it because it's really fun. And I actually thought it's super versatile when it comes to tones too. Now, there is one big caveat when it comes to the sounds of this guitar, and I guess we could relate this to the build quality as well actually, and that is that the pickup heights really lead to volume discrepancies when playing the two pickups. So the bridge pickup is actually quite significantly quieter than the neck pickup, and you should have heard that right from the first sound sample. That's probably because the bridge pickup itself is actually quite far away from the strings compared to the neck pickup. And what I'm going to have to do, because this is a soap bar pickup, is I would have the choice of raising the pole pieces, but I don't really like doing that, so it's going to have to get a shim in it, and that means putting a piece of wood or a piece of foam or even some springs underneath the pickup to raise it up to be closer to the strings, to give me a bit more output and to get the volumes a bit closer between the two pickups. So yeah, that actually is a build quality issue that I would have to say. I don't know if it's specific to this one example, this one instrument, but I would guess it is actually essentially kind of endemic in the whole range because these guitars are all built the same. So if you've got one of these MR Classics, let me know down there if you actually have volume discrepancies between the two pickups. But now we've got that out of the way, let me tell you about the tonalities of them. So for the clean sounds, I really enjoyed this guitar. I was actually really pleasantly surprised with the middle pickup setting and the neck pickup setting. I was getting really rich and atmospheric cleans out of those settings that I really was not expecting to get from this guitar. It really worked well for finger picking-y sort of stuff with a bit of extra reverb. It just sounded ethereal and beautiful. I was really not expecting a guitar like this to give me rich, elegant tones in that sort of a direction. So real full plus points to Artec and to Harley Benton for this guitar for those sounds. Now, clean bridge pickup tones on this guitar, really nice and spiky, clean P90 tones that I enjoyed very much. The pickup on this guitar is not as harsh as some other bridge P90s that I know, although again, that said, it could be because the pickup is a little bit far away from the strings at this point. When we got up into crunch territory, I really thought that we got some thick, lovely, mid-range, honky, aggressive P90 sounds. Just what I love out of a P90 guitar. And you'll have heard when I tried to do the Ramones that it does that Ramones kind of a thing. For classic rock as well, it does really nicely. It's just nice and thumpy. Again, that mid-range push from P90s, it just sounds great. And you do get increasing noise the more you wind up the gain on pickups like these, but that's something that I can totally put up with. Once we got up into even more heavier territory for the alternative rock and for the punk, again, these pickups are totally at home. They're snarly and gnarly, and they do that thing really well. And perhaps the biggest surprise overall is when we went down to drop D and proved that this guitar can actually chug. You know, it's not something that I really think is at home playing metal, and if you were just going to be playing metal, you should probably go for the modern version of these, which has the humbucking pickup in it. But for me personally, no problems whatsoever, and it can do metal. And of course, because it's a P90, you have that wonderful clarity, you have that wonderful bite, and it just did a really good job. I think what you'd really need to do is just make sure that your amp and any pedals that you were using were EQ'd correctly to give you chunky enough metal tones. But yeah, in terms of sounds overall, I think we've dispelled possibly the myth out there that Mosrite are only good for certain things, and this guitar is almost a jack of all trades. So full thumbs up for the sounds, and I actually think that if I get a shim underneath this bridge P90 here and get that closer and get the volumes evened out a bit, this is going to be a real tonal contender for me. I really enjoyed the sounds in this guitar. Now, the MR Classic isn't just available in this beautiful metallic blue. You can also get it in sunburst, you can get it in white, you can get it in black, and you can get it in candy apple red as well. So there's a multitude of color options available. But what if you're looking for something with the Mosrite style of vibe, but you don't want to get a Harley Benton? Well, there is a bit of competition out there. There's a few other guitars. There are original Mosrites, if you can find them. You'll pay a bunch of money for them. They're vintage guitars, so it's really the used market that you're going to have to look at there. If you've got the money, go for it, because in terms of a statement piece, you probably can't get cooler than a Mosrite in this day and age. But there are other modern day companies building newer and more affordable versions of this kind of guitar. I think the most obvious one for me that springs to mind is Dan Electro. They currently have the 64 model, which looks very similar and has a vibrato bridge as well. But there's a bunch of different Dan Electro guitars with weird, quirky pickup configurations and different options, so check them out if you feel like it. And there are also a bunch of guitars by a company called Eastwood, and the most Mosrite-like for me is the side jack design. Again, that's an offset design, different pickup options available. They build a baritone too. Very cool guitars, not too much more expensive than the Harley Benton, so check those out as well. And if you wanted to go into more kind of standard territory, or just something a little bit more quirky than your standard Strat, Tele or Les Paul, think about something offset by Squier or Fender, or maybe something even a bit weirder from the Squier Paranormal series, something like the Tornado, for example. Those are weird guitars that give you the same sort of aesthetic, the same sort of art house vibe as a Mosrite style instrument. Then there's other brands like D'Angelico, for example, and even something like an Epiphone Wilshire with two P90s could be something to give you a little bit of a shout in this sort of a direction. But in terms of competition, for the price point, you're not going to find anything like the MR Classic for €249 that can compete with this guitar. At least that's my opinion, based on my current experiences anyway. And so overall, my conclusion on the MR Classic is a very simple one. I love this guitar. It's so much fun, and I've really been creative since I've had it in the house. It's such an oddball, you know, it looks totally different to everything else I have. It really feels different too, but it is just a creative machine for me. It looks fantastic. I just love picking it up every day and just bringing out new riffs. It's made me play in different styles, it's made me play new stuff, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. And when I do pick it up and play it, I realise that for €249, this kind of build quality and this kind of playability, it's basically unmatched. So full marks to Harley Benton for that. There is the one semi-major gripe that I do have, and that's the fact that the two pickups have volume discrepancies. Is that a really major issue? I'm not sure that it is, but if you're a gigging player and you would want to be switching between pickups, you know, during songs, you would have to come up with a way to save this. You'd either have to get a shim in there, you'd have to raise the pole pieces to get the pickup sounding the same, or if you didn't want to do that, you'd obviously have to have a boost pedal playing when you're using the bridge pickup and then switch that off when you're moving across to the neck pickup, just to keep the volumes level. Because if you're not doing that, as you'll have heard from some of my sound samples, the volume levels do tend to go up and down somewhat, and that can be a little bit off-putting. But apart from that, like I've said, I really love this guitar. I'd like to keep it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what creative musical avenues it leads me down in the coming weeks and months. And I'm also quite interested to try the modern version of this guitar, which for €100 more gives you humbucking pickups, it gives you stainless steel frets and an ebony fretboard and a few other upgrades. And there's also a baritone version of this guitar. Could that be my first foray into the world of baritones? Let's find out in the coming weeks and months, but you never know. I'd really like to try it, that's for sure. I hope this video has answered all the questions you might have about this guitar, but if you do have any more, feel free to drop them down in the comments and I shall answer them to the best of my ability. And if you're still here, it would really make my day if you consider giving this video a like, or maybe even subscribing to the Rich Words Music channel. Plenty more videos on Harley Benton guitars there as well, plenty more stuff with affordable gear, with pedals and amps and other music gear related activities. If you'd like to watch a couple more videos from me, there's a couple of suggestions being made here and here, or you could even subscribe to my channel by clicking my little face up in the corner there. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.